All right, welcome back everybody to another live streaming episode of Alternative Money Monday. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Of course, I'm JR, co-founder of Ledgerama, the makers of Wallawallet, the original, the safest, and the trusted mobile wallet of the Hedera ecosystem. As per usual, I'm joined today by Tim INKY, our community manager. Always a pleasure to see Brandon the H-Bar Bull, my favorite influencer in the Web3 ecosystem. Good job on hitting that interview with Mike Maloney, by the way. Quick shout out. Of course, Mike Maloney being one of those guys that introduced a lot of us to the ecosystem. So thanks for doing that, Brandon. We're all super proud of you. Hometown boy, done good. All right. And today we're very pleased to be joined by Matt Smithies, one of the OGs in the Hedera ecosystem, somebody that's been an associate and somebody I consider a friend here in this crazy world of DLT, distributed ledger technology. So really pleased to have Matt here to talk to us about a number of things, but primarily about Dovu and shedding light on the crazy world of carbon assets and carbon trading, of a much misunderstood and perhaps at times maligned industry. And if folks noticed the kind of catchy thumbnail that was posted out there, much love to old Klausy baby, and the work that he's doing. But yeah, so I kind of want to jump straight into, we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, but I want to just kind of quickly jump into the kind of negative reputation that carbon trading has. But maybe first, before we do that, we should talk a little bit about what it is, right? So what are we talking, when we're talking about carbon assets, we're talking about carbon trading, we're talking about net zero, carbon capture, and all these things, Matt, what is it? What are we actually talking about?
Well, what we're talking about, there are a number of different ways to think about it, but ultimately it's this idea of what can we do to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, the kind of carbon dioxide. It comes in a number of forms. There's the concept of carbon reductions. So let's say there is a business that follows a particular activity, but then if they change their behavior, that would consider a reduction or almost like an avoidance. Or there could be a carbon offset, which would be, a farmer changes to agricultural kind of regenerative agricultural techniques. And by these different techniques, they could actively measure how behavior over time would sequester carbon from the atmosphere into the ground, and from that you could issue carbon offsets through kind of what I would consider, well, I'm biased here, but I would consider that the preferred approach, because that is what is called additionality. So a prescribed methodology or an activity produces a net positive effect.
Okay, so essentially the problem is that activities release carbon into the air, primarily in the form of carbon dioxide, also carbon monoxide, and a number of other toxic chemicals, but those two being the main ones. And as they enter the atmosphere, essentially these molecules rub against each other and create heat, right? And so that in turn leads to what we experience with the global warming. And so the carbon being released into the atmosphere, obviously being problematic. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I lived in Los Angeles in California for a long time. And I thought, so if I was sitting in my garage and I turned the car on and just let it run, right, and sat in a closed space, at some point, not too much later, I'd be dead, right, because I'd be breathing in carbon monoxide and I would die, right? So now, if I do this, let's say in California, right, I forget the numbers now, but the number of cars in California, if you were to add up the number of tailpipes emitting exhaust in California, in the state of California, and you were to multiply that average diameter by the number of cars that there are, you would get a tailpipe about as wide as as Death Valley, right? So I mean, it's a really, really big. I mean, you'd be basically sticking just imagine sticking a huge tailpipe onto Southern California. That's essentially, and that's what's happening all over the world, 24/7, right? So there's an awful. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
You're talking about cars. I was just thinking about airplanes, how much carbon emissions they emit daily. Like currently, when you look at various sites where they show the air traffic globally. I mean, it's immense. It's crazy. It's crazy huge. And Matt mentioned something about carbon sequestration. I'd love to expound that word later on. I'd love you to do it, and just for clarity.
Yeah, and I think also one of the big ones is, it's like the meat industry, rearing all the cattle, all these things that, and when we're talking about like carbon offsets, it's really easy just to concentrate on like the carbon sequester or like carbon offsetting part of it, but there are so many more elements, like the idea of biodiversity. You could focus on carbon offsets so much that you forget about the living biosphere. And so there are many companies focused on biodiversity credits, like all the way from rewilding, and it's not just carbon. There are so many aspects. It's like water as well, water credits and things like that.
Matt, that's kind of what I was going to do, is like the ancillary positive effects. I mean, there's, some people might want to warm out. Who knows? They don't want to wear a jacket to school, whatever it is. But there's so many other positive effects that come from this. We'll say like reforestation. If a rancher is going from, having a ranch that's pretty much all grassland to reforestation, where it's going to become, a rainforest or something along those lines. Or, if you are doing a cleaner form of energy creation, you're using solar instead of a coal plant, and there's besides carbon going into the atmosphere, there's also a bunch of other nasty things that are going into the atmosphere when we're burning gasoline and when we're burning coal and everything else. So what are your thoughts about some of these ancillary positive effects? It's not just about carbon, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. It's not just about carbon. And when we're having these kind of discussions, it's so easy just to focus on carbon, but at the end of the day, it's as much about water and wildlife than anything else, and yeah, I mean, I would love to hear, Jeremy, from your opinion, like the obviously we've got the big glaring clickbait title of
Right.
how carbon credits are a scam and everything. I would love to hear from you, like that side, from like what you've heard on the grapevine about that side of things.
Sure. So the title and the thumbnail, hopefully that served its purpose and it drew some attention, because there is a lot of press, right? There's a lot of stuff that's floating around. And of course, my point here was really not to bash on one side or the other. Really, I'm a truth seeker at the end of the day. I just want to know, I want to know what the truth is. But okay, so on the dark side, on the counter side to the argument is that essentially that the carbon credits are going to be another form of control, right? It's another form of taxation, right? And there's a lot of, particularly conservatives, are generally against heavier models of taxation, right? They want government to get their hands out of my pocket, get your hands off of my land, don't stop worrying about my cows farting. All of those, so there's this kind of side that is afraid, and large sectors of society are always concerned about what the upper echelon of society is doing, right? And so when you see organizations like the World Economic Forum, and they're pushing this kind of carbon neutrality, net zero, the kind of concern, particularly among more conservative circles, is that this is just another element of control, another way that that the people up at the top can fly their fancy jets over to Davos and meet and clink champagne glasses, right? But meanwhile, in the bottom, and in the middle sectors of society, we're no longer allowed to use our cars. We're no longer allowed to eat hamburgers that we love. I mean, it's so all these things now, but these are. What I love about this topic is that it is a genuine breeding ground for great discussion, right? Like
it is.
I love a good, I was vegetarian for about 7 years, right? And in the face of a lot of the things that I saw going on in the meat industry and corporate agricultural industry, I said, this is really bad for our health as a species and as a planet, so on and so forth. Then I wound up working as a a processor on a commercial fishing boat, right, where I was processing about 30 tons of fish every 3 hours, and and basically the idea of being a vegetarian when I was surrounded with fish guts and blood and everything was just, it just seemed kind of silly, right? So at any rate, that's how I kind of stopped becoming a vegetarian. I love a great hamburger, right? But when you look at the efficiency of growing beef versus the efficiency of growing things like soy or other more sustainable, typically vegetarian, animals just consume a lot of energy. You can feed a lot more people on an acre of wheat than you can, if you're raising cattle, those kinds of things. So it's a big discussion.
Yes.
At the end of the day, I think, I see things like pumping lots of carbon into the air, pumping lots of plastic into the oceans. I mean, these are all things that, in my opinion, we need to keep an eye on, right? The trick is, how do we do it again without, violating the rights of the individuals and all these kind of more conservative concerns, right? So I love difficult problems. It's a difficult problem to solve. Do I think that they're evil? No, I mean, technology can be, nuclear power, same kind of thing, can be used for great things or can be used for terrible things, right? So it's a great discussion starter. So that's kind of, that probably sums up in a long-winded way my
The thing
And
is,
just
topic.
oh, sorry, Tim, carry on.
all right. And just to tie into Jeremy's point, when he mentioned the fancy jets and everything else, I watched something, and this is, I can't remember the solid numbers, but per year in some X country, a single individual is allowed to emit up to maybe 3 tons of CO2 into the atmosphere in a single year. But you'll find someone who can afford it to fly private. They can emit the same amount of carbon like in 45 minutes. So it's also a question of morality. Why are you trying to tell me I should offset my carbon footprint while you emit like 1,000 times more than I do? I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, like, every time someone pops through our Discord or somebody complains on Twitter about us, I'm basically in blatant agreement with everyone. These are terrible problems we're facing. It's like, if we look at BP, for instance, like, they've done so much like ecological damage, it's not even funny. And the
British
fact
Petroleum,
that, yeah,
yeah.
like, and the fact that they think that they can buy these credits that are questionable at best to offset all the bad they've done, it isn't good. But ultimately we're living in a culture where the culture doesn't want this. The culture calls this behavior out.
Right.
And
I lived.
okay.
I was just gonna say, living on the panhandle of Florida, I saw firsthand the effects of what British Petroleum could do. I mean, big gobs of of petroleum just kind of washing up on the shores and stuff. But I didn't.
Well, that was my former company, Jeremy. Transocean, the owner of the Deepwater Horizon, and I was part of the recovery effort as well. So,
Wow.
yeah.
The basically the seams of the earth ripping open and bleeding oil all into the ocean. That was a crazy. I mean, that was like Exxon Valdez times. I don't know. Tim's too young to remember Exxon Valdez, but
the ecosystem there can handle it better than Alaska, though. There's a lot more oil eating organisms and stuff in the Gulf of Mexico and all that kind of stuff, then that ecosystem is a lot less fragile than the what happened up in Valdez. That was obviously both horrible, but there is a difference.
Right. So yeah, Matt, you were saying I kind of interrupted you there.
No,
who knows where we were, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of crazy that the current state of carbon credits is such that in order for a project to get carbon credits out there, you need to work with a registry, and you need to pay money, and these processes can take 12 to 18 months to get through. It can cost projects tens of thousands of dollars, and what we're relying on right now is the trust of these companies, and they do a fantastic job. But ultimately, it means that you know, this is highly inaccessible for, you know, a farmer in Bulgaria to actually unlock the carbon and underneath their feet in the soil to actually make an income. And so that's one of the things that really excites me. It's like, how can we unlock these different pockets of offset all over the world such that people that earn nothing can actually earn something and make money from selling carbon, and, you know, just maintain that over time.
Right.
Well, creating that economic incentive is critical. So how exactly does Dovu fit into this? How does Dovu improve that process? And, you know, how are you leveraging Hedera to make that even more efficient?
Yeah.
Thanks,
Fantastic. I mean, we can deep dive into the tech. I mean, I'm sure some of your listeners have probably heard of The Guardian. Like you got the big GC members like Avery Dennison using it. You've got a bunch of other people like kind of really involved in it. But we use The Guardian to create carbon credits.
Matt, can you just explain just real quick the real short version of what Guardian is?
Okay. Imagine a system for minting tokens, but the difference is you can assign different people with different roles to actually validate a token exists, or to prove it exists. So like if you're like in your wallet, imagine, or like Rob was creating a token, they could just press A. But in this, you can say, I'm creating this thing, this token, this ESG asset, whatever you want to describe it, and then you have a verifier come in, or whoever you want, to actually be like, yeah, that's valid. And then once they give it the rubber stamp, then it gets minted. And so it's this almost like, imagine like a multi-sig a way of creating tokens.
Okay.
That's a really simplified view.
Well, yeah, like I'm a fifth grader, please. I love it.
A little bit more advanced is, you know, like a workflow, kind of like Typeform, or like a Google form, like different these things attached. Imagine like a group of Typeforms attached. Imagine like a system where you could almost create these things, push them together, and you could send data to it, and the data could be sent to the verifier to validate the data.
Okay.
And so the Guardian provides this system for creating these generic forms, connecting them together, with the checks and balances at any step you want.
Okay. And Dovu is leveraging the Guardian system in some way.
Yeah. So what we do is we've basically uncovered like the simplest view of how to create these kind of carbon credits. So it comprises of, let's say, effectively 3 different forms. And at every single stage, we can get a third-party actor to verify forms. And then once we've kind of passed through this process, that's when the carbon assets are created.
Okay.
And that's very abstract. But my vision for Dovu is to literally make the onboarding of carbon credits as simple and quick as it would be creating a Google form or creating a type form. You just say, I want, this is describes my project. I want to connect this entity that can measure my carbon, and this person, this verifier, will verify the carbon. And so the vision is to be like to connect people from all over the world to like MRV companies, MRV, measurement, report, and verification. That could be like a satellite company that would actually take photographs of, or like an IoT company that would actually put sensors in the ground. And then they'll verify that understands everything to actually be like, oh, yeah, that's correct. And so if we can reduce that time span from months, almost a year, to, you know, days, and connect people to the right people, then that, and make sure that the suppliers don't pay a penny or pay 90% less, then that's the moonshot.
Right. And I love the audit trail. So, you know, I was poking around a little bit, and seeing that audit trail in action is really quite powerful, right?
Yeah,
Seeing from, I mean, from all the way from where somebody, let's say they're a farmer in Bulgaria, right? That that wants to submit a form to, to tokenize their carbon assets, and to be able to track it all the way from the submission of the application, through the verification process by the third parties, all the way to the actual minting of the token that represents the carbon assets. It's really powerful,
yes.
and very impressive.
I mean, one of the kind of items that we're focused on this year, kind of on a side note, is how can we add additional visualizations that aren't really used? So eventually you could see a verifier that verifies different projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so if a project falls through, then you could see other projects that could potentially be at risk. And how can we use data and visualize that in a way that makes buyers more comfortable?
Right.
And this also ties into the UN sustainability goals.
Right.
Sustainability development goals, I believe, where you could actually see, okay, this project has these side benefits. And so maybe you are a buyer that's only interested in projects that benefit equality for these cultures and things,
Right. So now if I look up Dovu on CoinMarketCap, I'm going to see, and I go to the actual page itself, I'm going to see that it's an Ethereum contract, right? So if you could tell me a little bit about the kind of the early days of Dovu, and then how Hedera was discovered. So, we talk a lot about Hedera on this channel for obvious reasons. So if you could kind of just talk about a little bit of the genesis, or the realization of Hedera and what value that would add to the Dovu project.
Yeah, so Dovu has been around since 2016.
Okay.
We had like a token sale. Obviously, this is a little bit before my time, but the token sale happened in 2017.
Okay.
And the big focus at the time, this is obviously the boom of Ethereum, like back in that bull run.
Oh yeah.
The big focus was around incentivizing mobility choices.
Okay.
So it would be there's a bunch of companies I think doing it these days, but it would be, okay, if you're a traveler, how can you make smarter decisions and get rewarded for those things? We actually had a bunch of really cool integrations. Like we had like an app and everything where you could connect your Uber account. And when you picked Uber, instead of driving, it would reward you for different, like it would reward you in Dove. Wow. During the different journey of the Uber journey, or you could fill out, different surveys and you'd be rewarded. And we did do a couple of pilots with Renault and a bit at BMW, and people could actually get rewards from them and then claim kind of rewards from their own stores and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's this kind of, I guess these days, because Web3 has advanced so much, it was almost like using tokens as a rewards program. Mm-hmm. That's where everyone kind of gravitates to.
Sure.
But at the time we were kind of so early that it didn't really kind of work out for us. And these companies, working with large companies can be quite slow at times.
Oh, it's painful. Yeah. It's painful. I understand. I worked in one for a long time. I know what you mean.
And so that was 2017, 2018. Incidentally, we actually went down the full sidechain route. I don't know if anyone remembers Loom Network. They did the whole crypto zombies thing. That's okay. One of the first courses that people that want to learn Solidity kind of go to.
Okay.
And so you learn all this stuff. But Loom was what's called a sidechain, where you could actually bridge your kind of tokens into it, and you could actually write smart contracts like zero gas fees and things. And Dovu actually created this whole infrastructure to handle that, back in early 2018. Mm-hmm. But it didn't go anywhere because it just these things happened. And so time just kept going on. And so we kind of felt maybe we should have a look at, travel in the concept of CO2 and things. Okay. And it's just pivot after pivot.
Sure. Oh yeah, we're familiar with pivots.
So
Absolutely.
many pivots. And then what was it? I guess years and years going on. Like I think either Tim or you picked up on our old white papers and things.
Mhm.
The idea of try to leverage some of the kind of advanced DeFi concepts like elastic supply rebase tokens, which are completely economically unsound, and I wouldn't recommend anyone go down that route at all. And we even felt, okay, we were looking at Ocean Market, if people are familiar with that, where it's this kind of data marketplace where you can sell data and buy data and all this kind of stuff. And we're going to actually take that and use it for kind of carbon, like kind of as carbon market. But that didn't really work because at the time to deploy a contract cost like $1,000 on Ethereum. You know, interestingly enough, when we were doing our own liquidity pools, we were doing reasonably well, but we had to pay like $500, $600 gas to have this like liquidity pool as a contract. So it's like it's so terrible. So yeah, like I fell in love with Hedera because I started to get involved with the consensus service. I've written a few tools on the network, and I was like, maybe we should try something with Dovu here. And so one thing just led to another. We started with leveraging the consensus service to kind of record the events, so proof of carbon. So if somebody did something, then we could actually record an event and say, hey, you've done this cool thing. And we were actually considering creating a token service around 3 months before HTS came out as well on Hedera. So that was interesting.
Yeah. A lot of the early teams in Hedera, it's been kind of that a little bit of a stop and start, like any, I think really like any early technology, there's lots of stops and starts, some pivots along the way while the technology matures. Yeah, I know HTS, it was kind of fun. I mean, it solved a lot of problems for a lot of the teams that we're building. But it's also kind of that double-edged sword where it's like you've been building a solution in one direction and then, oh, okay, well, no, we're going to hold on. We're going to turn around. We're going to do so. We're doing it this way, which is this way is better. We like this way better, but it's like we did all this work over here. Now we got to shift gears,
Matt,
sorry.
No, go ahead. You finish your thought.
I was just going to say, I remember complaining to Hedera that HTS shouldn't be a thing.
And because you had gone down a certain...
wrong.
Okay.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, at the time, I was arrogant, ignorant. I probably still am a bit now, but at the time, I always considered Hedera to be like a layer 0, like the consensus layer of everything, rather than being like its own L1, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You just want it to be the message bus, right? You just
yeah, exactly. I thought you could create side chains off this thing, like the whole idea with Lehman. That you could grab your bit of cyberspace and do your stuff. That's really what I was thinking at the time. Is like you could create side chains using Hedera as the consensus layer.
Right.
But now what it's kind of grown into is this whole L1 smart contracts, HTS and everything, which is the way it should be, because that means it's competitive with everything else. And
well, certainly with very important areas, I think Hedera's focused on. I think tokens, of course, the contract service. We were just falling behind a lot of other networks because we didn't have some of the tooling that was necessary to create some of the fantastic things we're seeing coming out of the ecosystem now. Now, it doesn't sound that my question that I was going to ask before, and I think you kind of already addressed this because you weren't thinking along these lines initially, but do you think any of your feedback caused them to go in a certain direction as far as Hedera, whether it was hips or anything along those lines? It doesn't sound like you had any influence on them creating HTS, but anything else? Have you given any feedback that you think has come to fruition in certain ways?
I mean, I've given a lot of feedback, and I'm sure some things have stuck and other things haven't. I mean, I remember I was trying to pitch for the longest time a Hedera ledger service, which was what if you could have, like, imagine your account, what if you could have some state where you could actually put tokens into. So you could say, oh, why don't we have a DEX? But instead of the DEX being a single contract, the DEX would be the entire network, so that every single application would feed into the network.
Oh.
That's like kind of insane.
Yeah,
know?
you're blowing my mind a little bit.
Yeah, but like imagine if the liquidity of all token transfers didn't stem from a deployed contract, but it stemmed from a native Hedera service, and the actual DEX would actually feed into layer one, and they'll be trading their own liquidity. The benefit of that would literally be you would have a massive pool of liquidity that would actually sit on layer one.
Uh-huh.
But that didn't go through because I think there were problems with things being securities. But hey,
well, that's one of the things, like with the Hedera token service. I never thought we would see anything like that. Kind of like what you were thinking. There's going to be, I think, other services that come out eventually. We just don't know what they are yet. But I'm sure, you know, the team and Lehman are going down that road already, and it's just going to be fascinating. First, what those things are, and then what's going to be built around them.
So I'm going to take a brief moment here. We, at the request of some of our users over the past few weeks, they wanted us to show off a little bit of what you can do with Wallawallet, right? So the comment was, you guys interview all these great teams and talk about all these great products, but you never talk about Wallawallet. So after these messages, we'll be right back. All right, so I just want to show off a little bit of what we can do here. Let's see, another live demo. What could possibly go wrong? But we're gonna, let's see here.
You keep saying that, Jeremy, but every time you do it, it works out fine.
Right. Well, so I got scarred, right? So back in the early days, I did a live demo in front of about 30 investors, and it didn't go so well.
It happens.
So ever since then, I've been a little, admittedly, I've been a little bit gun shy, but
you give the little caveat.
Right. Yeah. So any case here, we're getting this fired up here. We're going to go here, send you away, and go to here. All right. So here we are in lovely Wallawallet. And what I want to do today is I want to show folks, how do if I want to get some Dovu in my Wallawallet, what do I got to do? On the Hedera network, for folks that are familiar with it or maybe not, you can't just send somebody a token. If you want to send somebody some Dovu and you just enter in the account ID and hit send, it's not going to work, because the token needs to be associated with an account before you can actually receive it. And there's a lot of reasons for this. There's a lot of implications of being able to send people tokens. Enterprises don't want to have their Hedera accounts spammed with nonsense tokens and airdrops and things like that, because it creates all kinds of tax and accounting nightmares for folks that are receiving these tokens. So associating tokens is a thing. There is such a thing as an auto associate, but we have our auto associate slots set to 0. But if you want to receive Dovu, or really any Hedera token, it has to be associated with your account first. So we're going to take a look at how to do that. So you can see here at the top of the screen, we've got our main box, our main wallet screen here. And so there's the associate token button. I'm going to go ahead and tap that. All right. Gives you a little bit of information about where the fees are going to be paid from. There are micro fees associated with a lot of these transactions, so you have to have an account configured for paying the micro fees. There's already one that's I've already done that, and we might go over how to select that in settings at a different time. But essentially here you can see the token ID, and you can see a little drop down. I'm going to click on this drop down, and it's going to show me a list of popular Hedera tokens. And right here, third down on the list is Dovu. And we've got, and you can see the little in the brackets there, it says HTS. They're all HTS, but this is really a way, but when we give this little identifier, it's just a way to differentiate and let people know that there is also another token. In this case, it's an Ethereum, the Dovu Ethereum token that is bridged via something like Hashport. And now we've got our Dovu living in the Hedera network. So I'm going to go ahead and select Dovu. And now you can see the field has been populated with the token ID of Dovu. And I'm going to tap Associate Token with Account. It's going to bring up a little fee dialog. There are some micro fees associated with associating tokens. And I'm going to slide to pay. Well, you want to see my face, don't you? That's that Wallawallet biometric security in action.
That is really cool. The little slidey slide and the little facey face.
You know,
So
it's funny.
cool.
it's the little things, right? Ken, somebody mentioned that. Oh, it was Tony mentioned that last week. I love the slide to pay. It's like the simplest little thing, but makes a big difference, right? Slide to pay. You don't want to be making any accidents, especially when you're paying fees and stuff. Lord forbid, you accidentally send something in the wrong direction. But in any case, there we go. So the transaction was successful. And now you can't see the Dovu token just yet, but if I tap that little refresh, hey, there it is. All right. And now we have Dovu associated with our Hedera account within Wallawallet.
Now, this is where you go and buy some Dove to make the price go up.
And so this is and if you do want to if you want to receive some Dovu, right, from, let's say, I don't know, Uniswap. So I can tap on Dovu here. It's going to bring up my send and receive page. If I want to receive it, there's a receive button right in the middle of the main card here. I'm going to tap that. It's going to bring up a QR code. Of course, if you want to send, we've got the address book feature, all kinds of things going on there. And so that is kind of the quick down and dirty version of associating Dovu within Wallawallet and receiving it. Now, you mentioned if folks want to pick up some Dovu, this would be a great opportunity for you to tell people how they can do that.
I don't recommend anyone buys Dovu. You can do what you want.
Well, no, but if somebody is excited by the project, come on. Now,
I know.
Excited by this. Oh yeah, time out.
Not financial advice.
Yeah, none of this is investment advice. This is people sharing their educated opinions on YouTube. So please take it as educational and entertainment purposes only. But if folks are excited by the project that you've got going, which I think is an incredible project, doing great things. I love, despite all the kind of, what might be going on with our carbon credit deal, you guys are providing visibility, line of sight, transparency, fraud prevention, all those things into the carbon trading markets. So if folks are excited about the token, where does it live?
I mean, I think first, I'll probably say what Dovu offers at the moment. So one of the big utilities we're focusing on is this idea of carbon retirement. The idea, in short, for a fourth grader, is to say, I bought this carbon credit. How can I turn it to an offset? As in, how can I get a certificate that proves that I can kind of use it against some emissions or something? And so we're going to be creating the protocol to power that. There are competing protocols, but the reason why we're going down that route is because of the issues with rent on Hedera. There's these contracts, these protocols are going to need to pay value over time to be sustained. Dovu is going to be the core of that fee structure. And so my vision for this is, what if enterprises, what if businesses, what if anyone could actually buy carbon credits through Dovu or anywhere in the Hedera ecosystem, and then retire them through this retirement protocol, the Hedera, this pay with Dove, and then forever they could say, I used this credit to offset, and then you would be able to track that credit and know exactly the good that it's done in terms of data, in terms of economies, and then have that link all the way back, without having to rely on, like a third party, a centralized entity, as it were, paying for the rent for this, contract. Because right. Imagine if you retired your carbon and you lost that because the rent wasn't paid. That would break everything. And so that's what I'm excited about. That's what we're kind of starting to build out this quarter.
Wow.
For the excited degenerates out there, we do have a staking service that is really cool, because we can hook that in. We can basically work with any HTS token to get bonuses and things. You have a base rate, and then if you hold for longer, you get a higher rate. And if you interact with the marketplace, you actually get rewarded more. So if you buy carbon credits while staking Dove, you'll get a staking bonus, because you're actually doing good, and we're incentivizing behavior instead of just staking for cool. Carbon offset. Now, for exchanges, if you do want to dabble, you can go to SourceSwap. and I'm sure most of the people here watching that would go to that direction. Or if you're an Ethereum degenerate, you can always check out Uniswap or
Right.
BSC. The really exciting thing is, over the last couple of months, like we've grown from, I think, having 8,000 holders to like over 12,000 holders now,
Nice.
which is kind of amazing.
Oh yeah, that's a
And
big
so
jump.
we're starting to hit a kind of critical mass when it comes to the excitement around Dovu and the token and everything like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a nice uptick in social media. I've seen quite a nice little uptick in interest in Dovu. So, congratulations for that. You guys are, you guys have been building amazing things for quite a while now. It's, I think you deserve some positive attention. So happy to see that.
Appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
So can
it's actually surprising that you guys were started back in 2016. I mean, that was a shocker to me. I didn't expect that. It's really nice.
When you're older than Hedera.
So you mentioned one aspect of, or one feature, I'll call it, that you're working on this year. Are there any other kind of important roadmap items that people should look out for this year from Dovu?
Wow, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Right, you got a busy team. I mean, the amount of work that you folks do over there is incredible.
Yeah, we're currently going down like a forward contract route. So it's this idea of what if you could support projects to get off the ground anywhere in the world with like almost like a fundraising. So the idea is you would pre-purchase carbon credits, and once they get the money and then there's some proven additionality, then you would receive the credits after that. And so those things could be transferred to your wallet, where you could buy and sell them off like kind of NFT marketplaces, or you could retire them yourselves against our retirement protocol. But yeah, there is a lot coming on. Even the inclusion of more visualizations, filtering options, lots of silly things. Like, well, one of the big items is, of course, how can we simplify? How can we onboard like a farm in East Asia to start onboarding their credits within minutes instead of months?
Right.
And the natural progression is that how do you have a system that is completely decentralized, where you'd have wallet holders that would press the button and then it would just affect everything,
Right. Difficult problems.
Yeah, like aiming for like the protocol for onboarding carbon credits,
Right. Yeah, difficult problems to solve, but the difficult ones are the ones that are the most rewarding for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely a moonshot company for sure.
Okay, so as we're getting close to the top of the hour, Tim, if you would just as usual, make sure that there's if there are any questions coming in from our YouTube audience, we want to make sure that we're getting to those, or if there's any comments or any questions, of course we want to make sure that we're getting to those. And a little bit we're going to give away some jam tokens as well, so stick around for that. But Matt, what is the best way for people to keep up with Dovu's progress? What's the best way for people to kind of, to get a feel for what Dovu's doing and what's coming next?
Yeah, I mean, there are effectively two channels that you need to follow. either through Twitter, like Dovu Official, or you can join our Discord, and we basically update as much as we can there.
Great.
And so, yeah, like as we move forward, those are the two channels that we kind of broadcast to mainly.
Twitter and Discord. Oh, we lost Tim.
Oh no, we lost him.
Bye, Tim. I imagine he'll be back here in a minute. But while we're waiting on Tim to come back, I'm sure he'll pop back in. But Brandon, would you mind doing some Market Mondays for us and give us a line of sight into the crazy world of cryptocurrency markets? How are we doing this week?
Sure, I can do that. Yeah, so nothing too crazy as far as the crypto markets. We've dropped off a little bit, but I mean just normal stuff throughout the space. HBAR has underperformed a fair amount. of course, none of this is financial advice like we discussed before, but I think that's a combination of a few things. Number one, we had such a huge run up and we outperformed so much for a while that I'm not surprised we're giving some of that back. We're sitting at about 7.3 cents right now. The other thing that I think has us underperforming a little bit is, like always, we're seeing some tokenomics FUD come out again. So everybody knows that not only is Hedera decentralizing as far as their network, but they're also decentralizing operations. So they've broken off a lot of the ecosystem development to entities like the HBAR Foundation, which they granted 5 billion HBAR to that. We have the Swiss Hashgraph Association is another entity that's doing that. A lot of the operations spun off into Swirlds Labs. So a lot of their developer relations, developer engagement, maintaining the network, a lot of their marketing has moved over to Swirlds Labs. And so they're acting kind of like as a contractor. They have 100 employees there at Swirlds Labs. Actually, they helped out our developer partner at Twigital as well, putting them through pretty much like a training program. But either way, a lot of those they spun out and now they're kind of treating Swirlds Labs as a contractor, taking care of all those things that I mentioned. So there's payment associated with that. And the last payment the last agreement that was made was about 4 billion HBAR is going to be transferred to Swirlds Labs for the next 2 years of operations. Now, that is, from what I understand, if they don't spend that much, that'll continue on into the years to come. But that's a big number, right? So that makes people nervous. But the way I kind of look at it is they're still using Treasury exactly the way it was advertised from the beginning, right? To build out the network, whether that's for the Swiss Hashgraph Association and the HBAR Foundation for building out the network, whether it's maintenance and marketing and developer relations with Swirlds Labs. This is exactly what the Treasury was meant to do, build out this ecosystem. So, but of course, and I understand why people get concerned about that, but that's why I think another thing that might be causing some of that FUD around that as far as the tokenomics might be impacting the HBAR market as well.
Sure.
So we're kind of looking at all that kind of stuff, but we've been through these tokenomic scares enough that we know it's just what we have to deal with, right? It's going to happen over and over again, but it doesn't make a dent as far as my conviction of what's being built in the space. And as long as Swirlds keeps doing what they're doing and executing efficiently, I don't see any reason why Hedera would stop and stop utilizing the services they have to offer. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at the market as far as support, and right now we're looking at 7.3 cents. So I think we've broken through a couple areas of support. One of the big ones was there at 8 cents. There is a pretty strong area of support, I think around 7 cents as well. But we're a leaf in a hurricane. We're going to get blown around by the rest of the market as well. So we'll just see how things go moving forward. But I think we're in pretty good shape generally. I think the uptrend in general is looking pretty good. But that's really going to depend, as we were talking about a second ago, on the macro environment and what's going to happen there.
Right. As far as those... Yeah. Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry to interrupt. And sorry for dropping off by accident. My connection got a little bit of problems. So there was a question when the live stream was just beginning, and I thought we'd cover these during the market update section. Mm-hmm. I wonder whether you've got any insights or any information regarding what Gary Gensler just said about every other crypto in existence as a security apart from Bitcoin. I don't have any insight. I think that's kind of been his push from the very beginning. I don't understand how you could have something like Bitcoin that was very centralized starting off, right? There was just a very small group of miners. There was just a few people in chat groups that were maintaining that network. There was only a few core developers. Even now, there's only, a few mining pools that can essentially control the entire network. I don't see how you can differentiate that from any other network that's being started now and is on a path to decentralization. I think Hedera has established itself as having a good roadmap towards decentralization. I think that and this is more broad, he's just one regulator in the space. I think that the legislators, which I think are going to have an impact here as well,
most of the legislators learned some lessons in the .com and the internet bubble. All of the people who came out and said the internet is bad because it's only for porn or criminals, all the people that came out and said that and said we had to have really stiff regulation around that, ended up making themselves look like fools. Right, because it ended up being pervasive in our society, and I think that distributed ledger technology is on par with the internet and has as much potential or more potential. You know what the internet did for communication, this can do for value transfer throughout the internet and value transfer in general. It can unlock the economic potential of billions throughout the world. I think it can actually have more of an impact, and I think the legislators are going to look at this and they're going to say, it's a bad idea to stand in front of, and regulators as well. Not Gary Gensler's just one guy. I think they're going to say, I don't want to stand in front of innovation, especially innovation that has this kind of potential. They've also seen the passion of their constituents around cryptocurrency and DLT technology. They're going to want to be on the right side of this, and I think that's some of the regulators as well. We saw a huge dissent from one of the people in the SEC, pretty much the number 2, Hester Pierce, at the SEC, had a huge dissenting opinion against some of the things that Gary Gensler was saying. So I'm not concerned in the least around what Gary Gensler is saying. If HBAR were to be deemed a security, it would be very dangerous. It would push a lot of people offshore. It would cause a lot of Americans to start using VPNs and things along those lines. But as far as an ecosystem in general, the best thing we can do is prove that value we can bring to the entire economy, to people in general. And I think Dovu is a great example of that. We see the things that are going on in TradFi, some of the things that Larry Fink has mentioned, what Aberdeen is doing, what Digital Commodities Exchange is doing. All these things, what we see coming out of Atom.io and Avery Dennison and everybody else. I mean, it's everything that's happening in the ecosystem. The more we can prove that value add outside of speculation and crypto, the better we're going to be in the long term.
Excellent. Well said. And
was that too much of a rant? I'm sorry.
No, that was great. I love this.
Actually, it has rested a lot of concerns from one of the guys who asked the question in the YouTube audience. Really, really great.
Very good.
It's a valid concern. I mean, if you go back, Gary Gensler has been, he at one point said that he thought that SAFT agreements were, as he put it, the lawyers getting between the wall and the wallpaper. So he has said, he's had some not so positive things to say about SAFT agreements, but I would say that if there's a network, Hedera has gotten a lot of grief in the past for being perhaps too conservative, being too tightly knit to the regulators and not kind of opening up and letting her rip, so to speak. But now we're seeing why, right? We're seeing why they've been so closely following the regulators, why they've been so careful and cautious. And I think that'll pay dividends for the Hedera network going forward. Keeping things above board is, especially in the environment they're in, as a token administrator in the United States, they fall in a particular category under FinCEN rules, and they have to follow them. And they've been following it. It's tough to follow something to the letter when the letters haven't been written, but to the best of their ability, I think that they've done that. So if there's any, of course, Tim, if there's any other questions or comments that have come in from the YouTube audience, please go ahead and throw those out there. Otherwise, I'm going to ask Matt about some other stuff. What other projects are you involved in, Matt? I know you're such a busy guy and you are involved in so many different aspects of our ecosystem. Are there any other projects that you'd like to kind of put some attention on, let something else share the spotlight for a minute?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things I'm working on is with my partner at Winkstein. It's the INKY Art Club, and that's kind of her NFT kind of pass. I sent one to Tim. Have you got one yet, Jeremy?
I don't have one.
Oh, what's terrible?
I know.
It's actually been a while since I claimed some of the arts. Beautiful. You have to look at it.
Yeah, and so the idea is, what if you could have like an NFT pass, almost like Patreon, right? Where you have almost this Patreon membership that's tradable. And so there's this NFT pass where you could claim artwork for like a decade. And so that is like the vision. And so we've been live with it for probably about 6 months. There is something like 16 or 17 claimable pieces of art. There's only 300 passes. And like currently the way we've kind of worked on it is every single piece is the same, which, you know, is kind of fun from a distribution point of view. But one of the gaps we've kind of identified, and what gets people excited, is this idea of unique pieces. You know, like the baboons of the world, the Ghost Club. And so, what we've been working on, what she's been working on, is we're going to do like a frog, like a frog, like a unique frog NFT. So every single pass holder will get like this unique frog. And so we're doing these different archetypes, like a demon or a witch or whatever. And you're going to have this little frog, maybe with a bloody knife or whatever, and every single one's going to be unique. And it's going to be an interesting to kind of see if that sticks more with the community. The thing is, at the time when we priced it, we were aiming for the $100 price point, because it's like we wanted to kind of drive and deliver so much value through this pass. Unfortunately, since then, the price of HBAR has doubled, so we probably need to reduce to kind of bit in line again with the $100 price point. But you know, we're doing our best with it, and it's kind of interesting. Like I'm working with Dovu. It's very serious, but then when you work with the NFT community, it's like a completely different game, a completely different set of rules that you're just trying to not necessarily earn the trust, but you're just trying to find your feet in a completely different technology almost.
Right. And I've still got tons to learn, and we're learning all the time. I mean, since we released, you know, the version of Wallawallet that actually supports NFTs, it has been an eye-opening experience. You know, once we kind of got through the mire of supporting it from a technical standpoint, now there's the community aspect, there's the tokenomics aspect. I mean, it's a whole new world. So, all right. So thanks for sharing that, INKY's Art Pass. And the best place for folks to get a hold of an INKY's Art Pass, if they want to take a look at this, and if they like to take a look, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, like I mean, you could go to Hedera Sentiment, it's being launched there. Or you could go to like Little Ink Stain, like literally Google Little Ink Stain, and then you can check out her artwork, and you can actually go through and actually see all of the artworks on offer through this pass and everything. Tim, go claim more art. You have to make your hashback full
Absolutely.
of color, or your Wallawallet.
Well, yeah, right. So you mentioned, have you gotten an INKY's Art Pass yet? And I'll be perfectly honest, when I look at these, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to just wait until we've got support for the DApp connector and Wallawallet. And in the meantime, I'm missing all kinds of value.
No, the cool thing is you don't even need a DApp connector, right? The way it works is really cool. You basically buy your pass, you type in your account ID, press go, and it gets airdropped to your your wallet. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, I've got some homework to do then.
Yeah.
One up. Awesome. Thanks,
Here we
Matt.
go.
All right, so my favorite part of the show here, we're going to give away some jam tokens. So big shout out to Andrew Antar and the team over at Tune.fm. They gave us a handful of promotional tokens to help support the great work that they're doing over there at Tune.fm. When the music's played, the artist gets paid. So we're going to give away some jam tokens. We do this every week. And I love getting these tokens into people's hands. If folks haven't used Hedera tokens, you know, if they're not familiar with it, or if they are, but particularly for the ones that, you know, that may not have any of these, just to see how fast, efficient, and effective it is to transfer these things around. It's a lot of fun. So we're going to give away 10,000 jam tokens. And who's our winner this week, Tim?
Before I announce the winner, I'd like to thank Matt Smithies for your time. I mean, this chat has been immensely revelatory. I mean, of course, you've learned a lot, and all the necessary links will definitely post in the description. Guys, be watchful and get involved this early. The winner is at CJ the Great 210.
All right, at CJ the Great 210, the winner of 10,000 jam tokens. So thanks for participating. I love giving away tokens to our Twitter family. It's always an exciting part of the show. Matt, I echo Tim 100%. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and you taking time to drop by with us and chat. It's so much appreciated. I mean, just one of the absolutely integral, fundamental people helping to build out this ecosystem that we're in. So can't thank you enough, not only for being here, but for all the work that you do at Dovu and within the rest of the community. Thank you so much.
Well, it's an absolute honor to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. And if you want to bring me on again in the future, just let me know. Okay.
You are welcome anytime, any given Monday. If you want to come and join the panel and beat up one of our other guests, and ask them questions about why their product is evil or not evil, you're welcome to do so.
I think it might get a bit too spicy though.
Oh no, I love spicy stuff. Are you kidding me? The spice of life. No, you're welcome anytime, Matt. Thanks so much.
Thank
All
you.
right, so this has been another episode of Alternative Money Monday. Thanks everybody for being here. It's great to see you all. If you liked what you saw on the show, don't forget to leave us a like, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a comment. The comments are really important. If you liked it, tell us what you liked. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down, but tell us what you didn't like and leave a comment in the section in the comment section below. We need to see them. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back next week for another episode of Alternative Money Monday, and